Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Changing Faces of Europe. I am your host, Sarah Chang, and in the last podcast we covered some basic background information just to give you some context so you have a deeper understanding of what we're dealing with out here. The refugee crisis in Italy, why the geographic location is so important, and we also covered some basic terminology so that we're all on the same page. And moving forward, when you hear some of these testimonies, you can get some context of what they're talking about. So, in today's podcast, we wanted to get some local perspectives on the issue. So what we did is we went to the University of Catania, which was walking distance from the hotel that we were staying at, and we saw some students hanging out in the courtyard. We came up to them, we got to talking, we got to ask them some questions, and this is what they had to say. What are people saying about this issue? Like, what is the debate currently about this crisis from, your peers and your colleagues?
No, they are not welcome because they think that people coming from Africa, from Eastern Europe, they are criminal. They don't want to work. They want to work with criminal organization.
They are just divided. Some things that there are too many. Others who know the facts, who is conscious about the facts, not that the percentage of refugees or immigrants in Italy is way lower than the percentage in other states in Europe, in the rest of Europe. So there is really no problem here. But the people who doesn't know see is like a threat. But it's just a matter of knowledge, no facts.
The important thing to mention here is the difference between perception and reality. In Italy, the perception on the right are nationalists who say that migrants are a threat to the economy, to the cultural integrity of the country, and are a physical threat. On the left, you have people saying that this is just a political tool to advance the ideologies of the elite and older generation. You can't help but to make parallels with this crisis and what our debate is currently in the United States. In our country, you have people on the right who say that immigrants are depleting our Social Security benefits, that there are limited jobs for Americans as it is, that the wall is necessary and deporting people is good for our social and economic growth. Then you have people on the left saying that there are plenty of jobs to go around, that this country was built on the backbone of immigrants, and in the end, everyone in America, we're all essentially immigrants anyway. I couldn't help but see this nationalist point of view in Italy looks so much like the American exceptionalist point of view that is causing Americans to be just as divisive and apathetic as the viewpoints I was getting here. But I digress. In this next segment, you will hear from an Italian police officer who has been in the force for over 20 years. For his confidentiality, we will not be disclosing his name, but he works in the prevention and first response unit in the city of Sicilian Way. We asked him what his stance was on the issue of immigration, and this is what he had to say. Just so you know, in parentheses, this is going to be the translation from our interpreter, Mario, because he only spoke Italian. So here we go.
It's nothing about racism. Everyone comes to Italy without being integrated into the system. So culturally and religiously, the differences are so big that we cannot support all the diversity without that they're trying to integrate in our system. Yes, so he's pro-immigration, but with the opinion that they're coming here in this country, so they should try to fit into the system here, and not that we have to fit in their system.
He had a valid point, because even though he said that he was pro-immigration, he said that he was pro-immigration on the basis that they integrate into society. Which led me to the question, what's the integration process like? Is there an integration program in Italy? So next we went to a politician's office in Catania called Movimento Quinte Stella, which means the 5-Star Movement. They're a progressive right-wing party consisting of all young people, and they're up and coming in Italy. So we asked her some questions, and this is what she had to say. What is your opinion about migrants coming from war-torn countries and places like that? They're not economic migrants, so should they also be redistributed throughout Europe?
They have the right of asylum because they escaped from war or persecution or violence. We have a law just after the Decreto Sicurezza. People who came from a country who are not in war but they are persecuted, or if they have been violated. Or if there are environment trouble in their country, they can stay here for a limited period.
What is the period of time?
1 year.
So you're saying they would only have the right to stay for up to a year? What if the country is still in the state of war?
They can stay here just for the period of environment trouble, of persecution or violence. Then, if this period finishes, they should come back home.
Is there any integration program in place in Italy for these migrants? Is there any options like that?
This is the problem, in my opinion, because there is not an integration program for people who escape from violence or persecution. They just receive a protection for a limited period, but they have no right to find a job. They have no right to integrate. They should be deported in their country. The problem is all these huge persons who are waiting for to obtain the right of asylum or are only economic migrants. We can't to deport in their country, and they are all around the city, around the region. This is the problem, actually.
So, as you heard, this is an issue that is in the very least a crisis, because on one side you have people saying that we're pro-immigration and we should let them integrate into society, and the other side is saying, no, we don't need integration programs, this is a temporary fix and they all have to go home sometime. But what happens in the meantime? All these refugees and migrants that are fleeing literal war and violence and persecution are just waiting in this state of limbo as they wait for a decision to be made about their status. So in the next podcast, we're going to hear from refugees themselves, their stories, their struggle, what they went through to get to Europe in the first place, and why their second battle started after they got here. So all the information from today's podcast, you can get it, especially from the 5-Star Movement, from ilblogdellstelle.it, which is spelled ILBLOGDELLESTELLE.it. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and I hope you got something from it. Ciao for now.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.